Okay, we are now streaming. We got about 3 minutes before the show. All around me I got faces, worn out places, worn out faces, oh, and daily races, going somewhere. Going somewhere, and I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. Dreams in which I'm dying are the best I ever had, and if I forget it on the whole. Good morning. This is Dr. Lenny Thyme. You're listening to Steampunk Radio, and this is The New Way. Greetings.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, no expression. Hide my head, I want to drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow.
And I find it kind of funny, find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I ever had. I find it hard to tell you, find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very bad world.
It's a very, very bad Enlarge your world.
Mad world. Yes, it's a very, very mad world. And that's what we've got to put up with. Everybody's angry. That was Haley Reinhart and Puddle's Piddle Party with Mad World. And things are going well. It is morning. We are doing just fine. And this is the No Way Radio Show, where we take what we know and we weigh it. And we will get there whenever we get there. It's going to take some time to figure all this out. The world is no longer exactly what the world pretends to be. It is exactly what we make it. And however we make it is what it's going to be. Now, yesterday we were talking a bit about the Mandela effect. And the Mandela effect has to do with the fact that there are things that have changed that we have observed in our lifetimes that no longer work the way they're supposed to work. The object of how things are supposed to work is something that we've been taught in school since the time we were knee-high, and developed over time that there was a consistency to human life. We study topics like astronomy and anatomy to know where the planets are and to know where all the organs in the body are located. However, we look at the textbooks now and things have changed. The heart is in the center of the chest. The kidneys are underneath the rib cage. I don't know about you, but that's not where things were located when I was learning anatomy and physiology. And so it seems to me that my body is my body and doing the same things, and that what it says in the textbooks may be right, may not be right. Now, there's a number of different ways of looking at things. I've been looking at tetrachromaticity, which is the idea that some of us have an extra set of cones in our eyes that allow us to see enhanced color. If normally color is divided into frequencies and we have a resolution of 2 nanometers of wavelength, that means we can tell different shades of blue or different shades of green. Now I'm getting twice as many shades of blue and green as I used to have. And you take those tests on the internet where they put words and shading and you have a blue word on a blue background and you're supposed to see if you can pick it out. And I picked out 14 out of 15. I only missed one. So the enhanced color that I'm seeing, the greens are more vibrant greens, the yellows are more vibrant yellows, the blues are deeper blues. And so I got the blues, and I can sing, but you don't want me to sing. This is a radio show. No way. Take what you know, weigh it. The new way. Everything we knew has to be weighed. We look at what we've been given as context, and it seems like one of two things have happened. Either we have changed completely, and we're in an entirely different place. Chick, who works with SMQ, has said that we are now in the Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way galaxy, and that's a little different from the previous place we had been in. A lot of the speculators on YouTube are talking about the planet Nibiru, but I'm not quite sure that we've changed anything. I think perception is what changed. Humans work on human scale, but let's suppose that human scale is a variable instead of being a constant. If human scale is a variable, that means that we change our size and we change our shape, but we don't necessarily ever change out of being humans on Earth. So if the Earth can change its dimensional size and dimensional scope, then we could have a universe in a galaxy in a universe with a planet in it, and if everything changes size, we would never have any concept that the scales had changed. But that humans on Earth are designed as problem fixers, and we have generated as many problems as we've fixed, but it all plays out on different Earths and different size scales. The smaller the size scale, the more simultaneous Earths there are, so that at the very grandest scale there is one Earth, maybe one person who has created Earth, but then on every smaller scale that Earth is populated with the very same group of people. And when we have a population on Earth, some of us are awake and some of us are asleep. On this Earth, I like to think I'm awake. It doesn't mean I'm doing the same thing on a different Earth. It doesn't mean I'm awake on a different Earth. In fact, the chances of me being awake on multiple Earths diminish as the thinner you get, the less of your essence is left to be there. So we probably are active and working on many, many different Earths on different scales, and the scales are determined by different frequencies. So whatever frequency you resonate at, you are active with other people resonating in the same range as that frequency. But the ranges of frequency on different Earths are dependent on the size, and if we're on an extremely microscopic Earth, we would have lots and lots of different Earths with different peoples activated, doing different things on their Earth, solving problems at the scale at which we're solving them. Now let's go from human scale down to a microbe scale and look at the microbe scale and wonder what would we see differently if we were on a microbe scale than being on human scale. Microbes are stuff that we really need a microscope to be checking out. And when we look into a microscope, we see things like amoebas and blobs and little things floating around. And when we look and categorize based on our sight as to what we see that there's plants and animals and different other things that go on a microscopic level, so that there is similar diversity on a microscopic level to that's on a macroscopic level. And somehow that seems to agree with the philosophies that I typically hold, that as above, so below. And if we are projections through a 0 point, so that as above, so below happens on every duality scale, then we can arrange the duality scales so that they're stacked, and it's almost like a spinner going around a central point. Everything is offset off itself, and you can imagine a beanie with a little rotor on top, and the rotor is going in very slow motion. And as the rotor changes angles, the frequency of the person wearing the hat, the beanie, changes. And so as your frequency changes, if you go to longer wavelengths, lower energy frequencies, that gets you depressed and stressed out. If you go to higher frequencies, lower wavelengths, then things mellow out. And then we have something called the Schumann resonance at about 7.46 hertz, which is the normal thinking resonance for human beings. Unfortunately, there's a lot of interference with that resonance, and with the Mandela effect, we tend to hear some ringing in the ears, And so when the ears are ringing and things are not going well, everybody gets stressed out. Now, it's my opinion that it takes a fixed amount of energy to get something done, and that as you're collecting the necessary energy to get things done, you have to keep that sort of energy in a container and allow it to accumulate. Because if you start using energy before it's accumulated to the task on hand, it then spreads itself out and diffuses, and you don't have near as much energy as you need. Energy works like a ratchet, and when you have a ratchet, hello, we're on. Give me a moment to finish the thought. When you're talking about a ratchet, it won't actually turn until you have enough energy to make the full turn, and then it sort of clicks in and gets to the point where the energy is used, and then all the energy that you've built up that gets used goes into the proportions of places that needs to be used, and sort of cascades in a chain, and then you have to start building up energy again to get to the next process. Well, now I've got a guest online. This is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. She's the host of Carrying Water and Digging Holes. And that appears... No, I blew it. Oh well. Digging holes and carrying stones. Now I'm closer.
Carrying stones and digging holes.
Well, we're getting there. It's somehow. And it's on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And it's on Saturday mornings at 10 Pacific. And that means it's on...
No.
Nope, 9?
Yeah, 10 a.m. Pacific.
Okay.
Yeah, and on the slot, it's 1 Eastern time. So.
Okay. And I like your show. It's been lots and lots of fun the last few times I listened to it. I actually listened to Shannon Brown yesterday with you while I was sitting here and got to review that one. She was pretty cool. There's a lot of things that 25-year-old can do. Yes.
Yeah, she was pretty amazing. So, yeah, she's going to be part of the collaboration group. So, pretty excited about that. Just to see if it'll head anywhere. But yeah, this week, I forgot. I didn't even look to see who my guest was this week. But here, let me look while we're chatting.
I know I'm coming up as a guest here soon.
It's going really, really good. I got lots of people booked for forever. And then I get a lot of repeat. There's some people that I just really love. Oh, yeah, this week is going to be rocking. I'm going to have a repeat. The guy, Ken Dost, and he talked about legal stuff and mortgages about 2 months ago. And he was amazing.
Yeah, having him after Bill. You had Bill this week talking about legal stuff, and that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, another thing, too, is Bill and I have decided that we're going to consult and help people do their paperwork, actually do their paperwork for them and charge a fee for it. Because he really needs money, I really need money, and as long as I keep him on the back end safe, and, do all the stuff, that instructions on how to handle everything, we'll do the legal paperwork for people. And, what's in our wheelhouse. We're not going to go out of our wheelhouse. We don't do mortgages. We don't do any of that legal stuff with any of those, or credit or anything like that.
We probably jumped ahead of the listeners because we know what we're talking about. Why don't we take a step back and tell what sort of paperwork you and Bill are filing? Or you're not filing, but writing.
Bill is Bill's retired. He's older. And he was a U.S. common law marshal, and then he became a U.S. common law judge. And common law is the law of basically constitutional law, original constitutional law, sovereignty. He calls it common law. But so then there's other names for the law that's been copy pasted onto our society. and he calls it the color of law or admiralty law. We could also call it corporate law. And so we do the kind of paperwork where, obviously if you're innocent, we don't do murder trials or anything like that, but we can do tickets. We can do, certain things.
Hello, sorry about that. I just dropped out.
Lenny?
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone just kind of dropped out except for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened, but I saw that I had dropped out and it came right back. So we're talking about filing paperwork to establish sovereignty. And
yeah, basically, or if the system comes at you, being able to file some paperwork, but we don't come to court. We don't represent you. You have to represent yourself, and we tell you how to do that, and we'll send you the paperwork, and then you file it wherever you live, and we give you instructions on that, and then we'll do a consultation on Zoom meeting at the gate, and then another one if we need to, and then we're also going to be doing a trust that underneath your capitalized name to get it out of their hands, and then we'll make you the lower and uppercase name person.
Let's step back for a moment again. What we're doing is we're telling people how to take control of their own personal lives through the legal system. And the legal system is set up with several different overlays. There's natural law, there's common law, there's constitutional law, there's corporate law, there's admiralty law, and each of these have their own jurisdictions. And the jurisdiction that is in play with any given law depends on the scale that law is applied on, right?
Yeah, but you always want to, if you have to apply law, I mean, obviously keeping yourself out of trouble, goes a long way for you, to stay out of their system. But if you have to apply law, you definitely want to be in a position where you're sovereign, where you have the ability to apply, common law. But one of the things, I'll be uploading the show today that Bill and I did from Saturday, and I know Bill for a while. He really helped me, with understanding law and helping to apply it against the state. Me having had a private practice, for a long time, like over 18 years.
Private medical practice, not a private legal practice.
Yeah, private, medical practice, and outside of the medical system, right? So they, the state, and they tried to come after me with all kinds of different boards and all this other stuff that I was not in contract with. And so I had to apply, paperwork. And so since that time, Bill and I kind of worked on paperwork and developed paperwork, because we also realized you can't always use the common law system or sovereign law against the admiralty law or the corporation law. So now we're learning, we've been building paperwork that, if there's trouble in the corporation law or the admiralty law, that we use the paperwork that is in their system against them, instead of trying to establish or prove, who's right. Because that always gets you thrown in jail or gets you in trouble. And one of the things that Bill and I also, a lot of sovereign people or common law people, and we've gone down this road, surrender their driver's license and everything else that's in the system. But that means that you're not allowed to get your retirement, you know what I mean? Because your retirement's under your capitalized corporation name that they gave you after you were born. And the doctor is the big criminal in this. So when you have babies in the hospital, you're in the admiralty law jurisdiction, and they change you basically into a vessel, a boat, So the doctor claims you as a live birth. They get paid either way, because even death certificates now look like stock certificates. So they get paid, if you live or die at birth, doesn't matter to them.
Actually, it does. Don't they get paid more if you die at birth? Isn't there a whole thing about baby stealing right now going on?
Right. Well, what they'll do is they'll pull a birth certificate, most likely, before the death certificate if you're dead. And then usually it's like, I've seen bonds pulled on people behind closed doors up to $300 million. And I've seen life insurance policies pulled by these people and the government for like up to $300 million. So, I mean, you probably, if you're healthy and you're born, they can pull bonds on you your whole life. You get a Social Security number. They pull a bond and a life insurance policy. You got a birth certificate. They pull a life insurance policy, probably a bond on you as well. Then, you go to work or you get a job, and then you want a cell phone or something. So you apply, you get a cell phone. Then the cell phone company pulls a bond and a life insurance policy. So every time that you apply for something in, credit cards, mortgages, whatever, from the point on, and I'm pretty sure that when you register for school, isn't that what they say? Well, come early because, or in our district, we have to register you for school, right? So I'm pretty sure that means that they also pull a bond on you as a child and also a life insurance policy per school that you go to. So, every time that you move to a new school, they've got to register that with the federal government, which means that, the school's involved with the federal government pulling a bond on you. And, this is the thing this is how they got this whole bond thing in like years ago. If you're a cop, you have to have a bond. If you're a judge, you have to have a bond. If you're a real estate agent, you have to have a bond. All these.
I was
things.
bonded to run a nuclear source in a piece of chemical instrumentation. So,
say that again.
I was bonded by the NRC to run a nuclear source for a piece of chemical instrumentation when I worked at the nickel mine. I had to jump through all sorts of hoops to get bonded so that the company could actually get that piece of equipment because there was regulatory status on the instrument. And so
Right, so you're double bonded. So you are
I'm multiple bonded. The fact that I ran out is probably why I'm a targeted individual, was because I left with all these bonds on me and actually did disappear overboard on their ship because one day I got tired of it and just walked away. They don't like that, do they? If you don't play their game.
Well, because it had been a long time since I had. I have to upload several things on my YouTube channel today. So also, I'll just tell people I have a YouTube channel. It's Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project, and I put all my shows and other videos I do up there. But I did a whole blurb on the whole kind of changing the midstream. But anyway, if anybody's interested in legal paperwork, that video will be up today from the interview on my YouTube channel, and you can go listen to it. And then underneath it'll have information on how to get a hold of me and Bill too if you need help, and then have a consultation. And I think we're going to charge something like $100 an hour for that. So way cheap. And also, if we can help you or not, because we're not going to, we'll just charge you for the consultation. But anyway, so we had a conversation when I was in Oregon.
Okay.
You and I, and we were talking about how we were talking about the debt jubilee or the GCR and NASARA.
Okay.
And so I did a video on that yesterday because, I finally got to the point where I could think about that. You know how I don't know how other people's brains work, but I have a high functioning brain. So things get filed in my brain, and as things clear out, like it has its own filing system and way I manage my thinking processes. So it took me till yesterday to finally get to that, finish thinking about that conversation that you and I had.
Mm-hmm.
And we had talked about it in the conversation about how many people would be really, really angry, you know, that people got their house free with the title, and they got their student loans paid off, and they got all this other stuff paid off when...
Yeah, rewarding bad behavior, essentially.
Well, that's what it comes down to. I mean, they could take, you know, all of the compounded interest off of it and the interest off all of it and just have you finish paying it. And then, you know, we talked about like people like us who've already lost everything. And then I started thinking about, I mean, because it does piss me off because I've gone out of my way, you know, especially since 2005 when I really started to kind of work with this whole sovereignty common law thing. And I've really like not assumed debt. And, you know, there was a couple periods where I thought I might buy a condo or something, but I decided not to because I don't really know what I'm going to be doing in 30 years. And thank God I didn't. But the deal is like, you know, I overly took one's personal responsibility not to get credit, not to get credit cards, not to get all these things and get myself so dug in so far deep that I couldn't get myself out. So it kind of started, you know, that conversation we had yesterday as I was thinking about it was kind of like making me mad because it did kind of make me mad. Then I thought about the Native American people who owned all the land in the United States before, you know, anybody else ever came here. And I thought, well, are they going to get paid back all the money for their land? Are they going to get their land returned back to them with title? I mean, and then what about after that, like all the farmers, like in the 80s, you know, Farm Aid and all that stuff when farmers were losing all their big farms across America. I mean, it was like a slaughter. And these were like 5, 6, you know, 6-generation farms, 7-generation farms. And people were grown up on these farms to manage those farms. I mean, so you have all these pre-trained people, pre-trained education, you know. And then these people would take over the farm like it's a business and manage it to supply the food for the United States, you know, the people in the United States. And a lot of them grew organic. A lot of them were, you know, good. It wasn't until they got rid of all the farmers that they started introducing, you know, GMOs onto the farmers and the seeds.
I think they reset a lot of things at World War II, and then they came to some sort of agreement that they weren't going to talk about the things that were so horrible they couldn't talk about them. And they must have listed off a whole bunch of things that they made up new stuff for, substituted the new stuff for the old stuff, taught it as though it had always been done that way. Because I know that as a chemist, I learned my chemistry in depth in the late 1970s and early 1980s. That's when I was in school. And the cutting edge of chemistry was something that took me 6 or 7 years to get to the edge of from when I started post-college stuff to when I actually got awarded a PhD degree. And that was a journey of figuring out what was out there, how it was done, and then doing something that hadn't been done before. So the process for a long time was working on somebody else's project to learn how to use the equipment so that you could make sure that the equipment was giving you a valid answer and that you understood the theory of how to get results. I used infrared spectrometers and ultraviolet spectrometers, and I was a synthetic inorganic chemist. I made compounds and then analyzed the compounds for the frequency of vibration that they were showing, because every different element has its own characteristic frequencies. And that's plural. I mean, you take an element like iron, and in the book, there's pages and pages of frequency of iron emissions, not just one or two emissions. It emits all over the spectrum. And so you figure that iron is a minor component of living systems, but it's major enough that we need iron in every single blood cell in order to make the hemoglobin work. And so a number of molecules of iron that everybody has contained within them, I'm sure is in the billions or trillions. But compared to the number of other molecules around, if it's 100th or 1,000th of a percent, I'd be real surprised. I don't think there's even that much iron in the system. And so when we deal with individual iron molecules, it's like dealing with individual human people on Earth. It's really, really very much a good analogy, so much so that I think that the chemistry mathematics applies on human scale to social order. And I can do things with chemistry group theory that explain how small groups of people work, and I find when I apply it, it really does work. And that if you have a group of people, I can tell you how it's going to work without even knowing the people. Just this group size.
Okay, so let's go back just real quick and
Okay.
finish up the last topic.
Okay.
Because I'm having a 420 moment because I'm not traveling. So I just want to finish up. But okay, so back to the debt jubilee thing.
Okay.
And so this was the ending of my thought yesterday and this is why I did the YouTube video, was because, and then on top of it, you have these farms, right? And then we'll get back to this whole chemistry thing because I think it's fascinating. Anyway, so then you have all these people who have these big farms, we're talking like 20,000 acre farms, right? That were in a family, that, the banks stole, illegally took in some cases from people. And then now you have all these family lines and generations in the future that don't have a job. They were guaranteed a lifetime job, right? In the industry that their family did. So you have all those people who don't fit into the system because they were raised or born from farmers who didn't really know what else to do. So you have all those people that are unemployed. You have 20,000 acres that was taken, and in some cases they built developments on. So then they gave a title, a mortgage to every house that was on that 20,000 acres. So how do you have a debt jubilee? I mean, I wouldn't want the money for, the original money from that 20,000 acres. I'd want my 20,000 acres back with my house and my barn and all my equipment on it.
Too many people.
That's what I would want.
Too many people with claims to it.
They can't. Think about it. Yeah, right. They can't give it back to you because now there's 400 homes on that piece of property that have been titled. Each individual house has been titled. So, I mean, and this is the other thing too. Think about this. If you go to buy a piece of land that has no electricity on it and it has no well on it and it has no importance on it. So if it has electricity and it has a well, they can give it an address. Now, if they can give it an address, then the bank can actually give you a loan to buy that piece of property. But if it doesn't have electricity on it and it doesn't have a well and it has no, way to give it an then the banks, they can't give you anything for it, right? They will not give you a loan for it because there's no possible way that they can own it and control it because it's not registered. So here we go back to this whole common law thing, right? But anyway, so the bottom line is so you can't get back now that you have, 200 houses on your acreage of what you've had in the 80s. So like we were talking about, there's no way that it is going to be fair for any kind of debt jubilee. And so I just offered on my video, the best thing to do is, help people now, help them, get where they need to go. And people that have debt, maybe get rid of the interest and the compound interest and things like that and get back to what they originally signed for and owed. I mean, because that's another thing. That's another responsibility. You signed.
It's all fraud.
Regardless of the link.
It's all fraud.
Regardless of.
Can't base anything on it. It's fraud.
You made a contract. This is the deal. This is where it gets to integrity and and it has to do with your soul, is because whether the bank was stealing from you or not, or stealing from people or not, you willingly signed a contract with your name saying that you would pay.
You willingly signed it under fraudulent circumstances because they were not clean in offering you the contract.
Yeah, but
Contract doesn't represent the
matter. What
reality.
matters is that you signed it because you wanted what they were going to give you, and that becomes a soul thing. And so you are, your energy and your soul and your body needs to pay that. Now, but does it need to pay all the interest? No. If you want to keep your house, maybe they can give you, a better price and take into consideration.
They don't own my house. We need something completely different than land ownership. The land owns the people, not the people own the land. And I'm not going to buy into any system where somebody else says they own my stuff. But how do I know I own my stuff? Who am I?
We're talking about the debt jubilee.
Yeah, I think if a debt jubilee happens, it's going to need to be a reboot. It's not a reimbursement. You couldn't possibly reimburse every individual on an individual basis and get it right. There's not enough there. It's been running on theft and bad integrity for way too long. But you figure if...
Like, at least, within our history, 7,000 years.
Yes.
So how do you go back and right all the wrongs financially that have happened to people across the world?
No, you just set it...
There's no possible way you can make it happen.
Yeah, so you gotta just set things so that there is a definite floor where people are taken care of to the point where they know they have food, housing, clothing, communications, and other...
Medicine.
Yeah, whatever is necessary to keep people going, that's a ground floor service provided. Everybody gets it. There's no pay to it. And then as we start value-added things.
That's why I kind of like this whole idea about, I've been watching Hawaii, and Indonesia has already done this. It's just, the banks have been standing in the way. But I've done mine. I've got my paperwork somewhere. But I did you would get $1,200 a month. Every adult worldwide would get $12. Whatever currency at the time that they did it, they established it in the USD.
Okay.
You would get $1,200. Everybody worldwide after 18. It's called the basic income. And then anything you got on top of that, but that means that once you got the basic income, there was no Social Security, right? You weren't going to get that. No pensions, no welfare, no disability, none of that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And then you would have access to medicine, right? For sure. That would include all access to medicine.
Mm-hmm. And communications. Because any